Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, I'm Dini Firda Novita Putri, my student number 038. Here I would like to explain about spoken discourse. So, pay attention please and enjoy the video. Okay, firstly, I would like to deliver you about the definition of spoken discourse. So, according to Juwita 2012, spoken discourse is a discourse that is delivered using oral media. Spoken discourse is principally created in real time and situation. Therefore, often the spoken discourse is identified with interactive discourse. The spoken discourse is bound by space and time, while written discourse is not. And the next is spoken discourse is divided into two forms, and you know what is them? They are monologue spoken discourse and dialogue spoken discourse. Okay, for the next, I will give you the definition about monologue spoken discourse and dialogue spoken discourse. The first is monologue spoken discourse. In monologue spoken discourse, the speaker dominates the role, while the other party or audience only acts as a listener. While the dialogue spoken discourse. In a conversation involved two parties who give and receive information from each other, the role of the participants in the spoken discourse of the dialogue is the same. No one party dominates the role. Usually in oral dialogue, good relation between the participants are always maintained. Dialogue spoken discourse can be distinguished into natural dialogue or real conversation, and engineered dialogue or text dialogue. Okay, and the next one I will explain to you is about the elements of spoken discourse. They are participant cooperation, speech acts, agency pairs, openings and closings, turn taking, link dialogue couple, topic of conversation, conversational grammar, correction, and code switching. And after this, I will explain to you one by one. Okay, the first element I will explain to you is about participant cooperation. In relation to the principle of cooperation, Grace and Richard has described the existence of four principles of cooperative behavior, which he calls the maxim of cooperation. The four maxims are maxim of quantity, maxim of quality, maxim of relationship, and maxim of manner. The maxim of quantity explains the fact that the speaker usually provides sufficient information, neither less nor more than what is requested by the other party. In this case, Grace recommends make your contribution as formative as expected. Furthermore, still on the maxim of quantity, Grace and Richard assumes that if a speaker has a way to get the information needed by the listener, the information must be communicated to the listeners. So the next maxim is the maxim of quality. The maxim of quality is based on a basic assumption which states that what is expressed in a conversation is the truth and the situation is real. Thus, a new relationship maxim will be formed if the participants of the conversation already have the same presupposition about what is being said. In another hand, there's maxim of relationship. This part of maxims, violation just has one category, that is be relevant. The last is maxim of manner. The maxim of manner is the principle of cooperation related to the strategy of procedure for the continuation of a conversation. This maxim is directly related to cultural factors and habits that generally apply in a community where the conversation takes place. Therefore, this maxim is also related to the principle of politeness. Okay, the next element of spoken discourse is speech acts. The concept of speech acts was first coined by Austin. The concept of the speech act starts from the basic assumption that the minimum unit of a communication is not a sentence or other expression, but is the appearance of certain acts such as making statements, asking questions, giving orders, apologizing, thanking, and criticizing. A speech act can be described as an action carried out through speech activities when involved in a conversation. On the other hand, a speech act can be defined as the smallest unit of conversation that has specific function, and a speech act is part of speech event. The speech event in its entirety is the discourse itself, whose form may be in the form of a complete conversation, a fragment of conversation in which the speech act is the constituent element. That is, a speech event consists of a series of meanings, actions, and responses. Broadly speaking, speech acts can be grouped into consecutive speech acts and performative speech acts. Consecutive speech acts is also known as descriptive speech acts. A neuter is constant if it is only used to say something. Furthermore, a speech act is called a performative speech act if the speech does not just say something but also acts on something. Okay, for the third element of spoken discourse is adjacency pairs. Adjacency pairs are speeches that are produced by two-party speakers and addresses on an ongoing basis. The first utterance is the first part of the pair, and the next utterance is the second part of the pair. The first speech is called stimulant, while the other is called by response. These fragments of conversation pairs or side-by-side pairs can be found in complete conversation sequence or in simple conversation fragments. In connection with this, Richard concludes that side-by-side pairs consist of eight categories. They are greeting to greeting, summons to answer, complaint to Daniel, complaint to apologize, request to grain, request for information to grain, over to accept, and over to reject. The eight fragments for the side-by-side pair are not always found in a series of conversations. Which type of fragment is found will largely depend on the situation, content, and actors involved in the conversations. Okay, for the next element of spoken discourse is openings and closings. According to Richard, the openings and closing of conversations and other types of speech events are organized and orderly. There are two kinds of opening and closing. The first is the opening as the initial speech and closing as the final speech in a complete conversation. In this type, the most commonly used way as an opening is a side-by-side pairs in the form of greetings. In addition, it can also be used as an opening by asking again what has been said before. This method is usually used to open a learning process or lecture. For closing, it usually begins with a pre-closing which is marked by the start of the conversation not being smooth or a decrease in the spirit of speaking which is marked by a decrease in intonation. Second, the opening and closing are found in every fragment of the conversation. In this type, each utterance or series of speech that begin a pair fragment acts as a conversation starter and each answer or response in a closing. So the next element is turn taking. Turn taking is everything related to who, when, and how long someone or one party gets a turn to speak in a complete conversation or in a conversation fragment. Levinson explains that this side-by-side pair is fundamental unit of conversational organization. When someone produces an utterance that function as the first part of the pair, it is expected that the other party will respond accordingly. There are speakers who always want to dominate the conversation in the sense of giving less opportunity to their partners to also speak. On the other hand, there are also speakers who make less contribution in the sense that they do not respond to their interlocutor. Both conditions described are equally unfavorable. This will both result in the conversation not going well or it cold and quickly to find things like that so that the conversation can take place well. The factor of taking a turn to speak needs to be considered basically taking a turn or speaking opportunity already has a certain contribution. Although it is not always sequential, this has been regulated by convention that exists in the midst of the speech community. In this regard, Skelgolf and Jefferson in Richard have provided procedures for participating in the conversation. The basic rule is that there can only be one person speaking at a time. A speaker may choose the next speaker by using side-by-side pairs. The rules for taking turns vary depending on the type and event of speech. For this reason, experts have grouped this turn taking into four types. They are automatic turn, regulated turn, snatch turn, and voluntary turn. Kinematic turns are often found in conversation with only two participants. Arranged turn will be found in engineered conversations such as in drama, text, films, and soap operas, as well as informal conversations such as discussion and seminars. The turn one will be found in a quarrel or in free discussion. Voluntary turns will be found in conversation. There are exchange of opinion. There is people who understand the problem will take the opportunity to speak. The next element is link dialogue couple. In the fragment of conversation pairs, what is called conversation series is known. The nature of the circuit is also an important aspect to analyze. The nature of the circuit is also non-link dialogue coupled or adjacency pairs coherence. The main function of the series is to form a situation of changing speech in a series of conversations or ritual interchange, especially in pairs in the form of question and answer. The next element of spoken discourse is conversational grammar. A conversation generally does not consist of complete sentence. This means that the language units that are used in conversation do not meet the criteria for complete sentence. Even Pauli and Richard proposes that the most basic unit of conversational linguistics is not a complete sentence but clause. Most of the clauses used are a series of events or simple statements. There are two kinds of topics in the context of conversation. There are general topics and small topics. The general topic is usually the starting point of the conversation, which will also be the title of the conversation. Small topics are located in the series of conversation and often change according to the series of conversations. The function of the general topics is to direct the entire conversation to that it doesn't deviate from the original point. Small topics serve to measure and further specialize this discussion on the certain aspects. Okay, the next element is correction. The term rectification in this concept refers to the efforts of speakers to correct mistakes that occur in a conversation. This is done to ensure whether the message conveyed can be understood well by the speakers or not. This correction can be made by both parties, the speaker and or the addressee. Correction made on the initiative of the speaker are called a wave correction, and other corrections can be made by the speakers. Okay, and the last one is code switching. A conversation does not take place monotonously using only one particular language. Sometimes there is a mixing of usage between several languages, two or more varieties of language in a communication event. Okay, maybe that's all from me. Thank you for your attention and thank you for watching my video. I think enough here. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.